Welcome to Total Acre Live. I'm Ryan Wolf, agronomist with WinField United. Today I got with me
Tyler Steinkamp, agronomist for WinField United.
Yeah, Tyler and I are going to talk a little bit today about some things that are going on in the industry. And many of you guys maybe have heard of this, but definitely supply issues have hit the industry. And not only the ag industry, but I think anywhere you go, from the grocery store to the retail store to whatever, we're having supply issues. And for agriculture wise, it's really hit the glyphosate and glufosinate markets for us. And these are things, we got higher demand nowadays. We got port congestion going on. We see that in the news all the time. We're still worried about the COVID-19 and how that has affected supply chain. We have some China issues going on as far as energy crisis and some environmental issues going on. And then just raw ingredient shortages out there. So that's really put a supply constraint on definitely glyphosate and glufosinate going forward. And for a grower out there, we're still fighting weeds. We're still fighting resistant weeds, and we're going to battle them again in 2022. Just saw that University of Tennessee documented dicamba resistant water hemp going forward. So there's another one we got to worry about here. So Tyler and I are going to talk about some things today as far as maybe what we can start thinking about for 2022 for weed control. So I'll let Tyler kind of take it away.
Yeah, Ryan, I think one of the biggest issues that we're going to be looking at is some of these supply constraints. And guys, one of the biggest things that we have to do going into 2022 is have a really good, solid plan, have multiple modes of action, and be using residual control products to make sure that we have consistent residual control. Okay, the way I like to describe it is actually somewhat similar to a roller coaster. So if you think of from planting to when the rows close, and you can throw this image up here, we have to get from when we plant to when the rows close to actually get decent weed control. Now, the reason I call this kind of a roller coaster is because when you put on a residual control product, you're going to get a lot of control initially, and then it's going to slowly taper off there. So you have your highest amount of herbicide control and concentration when you first start. And then from there on out, we start to lose control. Now, once we get below the critical amount of the herbicide to actually supply weed control, that's when we start to see weeds start to pop through. Okay, now as far as 2022 going into this season, we need to have a really good plan. We've had in the past some of our post applications to help us out, right? But now if we have a limitation or if we have weeds breaking out, we're going to have a lot harder time cleaning that up as compared to what we've had in previous years. Okay. One of the biggest things that we can do is make sure we have full rates of residual control products. So in a great example, if you have a half rate, understand that it's not going to get you all the way to where it needs to be. So just like what we were talking about with that roller coaster analogy, okay, your highest rate is when you first start. And then as you go through the season, you start to see that rate taper off to get below where you need it to actually supply control. Okay, and as you can see here, about halfway through the season, we run out. Okay, whereas with a full rate of a residual control product, now we get a lot farther in the season. Now, I'm not saying we're going to get to when the rows close, because that's unrealistic, especially with us planting earlier in the season. But the full rate is going to get us a lot farther down that hill. And after all, Ryan, the taller the hill, the more fun the roller coaster, right?
Yeah, who doesn't like big roller coasters?
Exactly. And you know what's even better than one hill is having two hills. Okay. And so with a full rate of a herbicide, it's really important to have a good backup plan, because as that starts to taper off, whether it's full rate or a half rate, we need to have another layered residual control in here so that when that full rate starts to roll off, now we got that post-residual herbicide to come in and take over and get us to when the rows close. Okay, and that it all starts with that full rate so that we have smaller weeds when we put that post application on, and so that we can make it to when the rows close at the end of the season.
Bigger and longer roller coaster rides for weed control. Love it.
Exactly.
Love it. So what other thing we got to think about, though, is post applications too. I mean, getting the most out of your post application this year.
Right.
I see rates of glufosinate and glyphosate going down in their applications just because of, first of all, there's shortages. So we'll probably have to conserve a little bit, but price too. Some of these prices of these products have kind of skyrocketed a little bit. So you got to get these things done the first time, and there's going to be no second chances out there. As far as we're not going to have an unlimited supply of Liberty, glufosinate, Roundup, glyphosate to go kill big weeds later on in the season. Okay, so getting the most out of these post applications. So first of all is following that label out there, getting the right gallons per acre out there, getting the right nozzle out there for coverage is critical. But then what you really, I think, got to focus on is having your adjuvants do some of the heavy lifting for you this year. And adjuvants become a very, very important piece of this puzzle going forward. Water conditioning, things like Class Act NG, so critical this year in rate. We've actually probably over the years cut rate of water conditioning down. Maybe it's because of pocketbook. Maybe it's because we didn't think about we needed it because we were just putting a lot of chemistry on at one time. But now it becomes very important, especially as we start lower the rates of some of these chemistries out there.
You can definitely cover up a lot of stuff with a lot higher rate of the chemistry. That's for sure.
Yeah. And so we've got lower use rates. We're going to need better water conditioning out there. I mean, we got to first know your water, how heavy or how hard your water is out there, and then adjust that rate of that water conditioner out there, not only for the water, but also for maybe the dust in the air when that particle comes out that spray boom, all the cations and dust on the leaf surface. We need to overcome those scenarios too with that water conditioner. So Class Act NG, I'm thinking about going forward, becomes very, very important with that. The other thing we got to think about is surfactants. Surfactants, even in the dry year of 2021, really shined. Adding extra surfactant to that tank definitely helped with weed control. And so again, Class Act NG is going to supply some of the surfactant, but just even adding like preference or permeate or surfactants in that tank to help spread that leaf or that droplet across that leaf surface, add a little humectancy out there, and overall get better weed control. And then oils are one of those things, I think, especially as we start tank mixing out there. These oils, we've got a lot of oil-loving chemistries we're using out there. Crop oil concentrates, MSOs, so Superb, Destiny type products become very important, especially on your different weather conditions out there. You know, the hotter the drier it gets, the more cuticle you get on the leaf. You got to melt that cuticle to get that herbicide into that plant. So that becomes very important.
Yeah, I think we saw that especially this year in the volunteer corn. I mean, that was huge.
I think everybody saw that, not only the antagonism that we had with these group 1 herbicides, but then anything that you had oil within enhanced that control out there. So, and then last, I think interlock. We used to talk about a lot of times in the old days about interlock every acre when that product came out. And I think this is one of those years where a drift and deposition aid going forward on every acre you're going to need. I mean, we're going to have to get every droplet of herbicide that comes out of that nozzle onto our target, and we can't waste anything this year. And interlock's going to help us with that. So when we go forward this year, you know, we talked a lot about pre's and multiple mode of action pre's, full rates of pre's down, making that roller coaster longer. Longer ride's always good, you know, with using a residual post-emerge, and then letting those adjuvants do that heavy lifting in your tank for you this year. I think that's the key as we go forward, Tyler.
Right. Yeah, so we do have a question that came in, Ryan. How low can you go with glyphosate and glufosinate rates?
That's a great question. I think a lot of growers could push that envelope this year. But I would say as far as if you're looking at a 6-pound glyphosate, 22 ounces is probably the minimum you want to go. Glufosinate rates, probably 29 ounces is the lowest you want to go out there. I mean, Tyler, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is just make sure you're following the label directions. But yeah, I think I would agree with those rates.
Absolutely. Don't don't go below labeled rates out there. Right. So we got any more questions out there today?
Not as of yet.
I don't see any right now. So, okay. Well, I appreciate everybody logging on today and joining us. Oh, we got one more
We
question.
got one more. With my pre-herbicide application, how dependent are they on water or tillage? That's a good question. So with water and tillage, basically when you're looking at activating that herbicide, that's what's going to be critical there. Now we saw this last year, Sean, especially with the drier conditions that we had. That's why when I'm looking at my pre's, I really do like to have some of these pre-mixes that have different active ingredients in them, because often they need different amounts of water to get them activated. So you can use or you can go with those herbicides that maybe have a little bit less water requirements, and then the ones that need a little bit more in a wetter year will tend to outperform them. So it's kind of nice to have those premixes there. As far as tillage, tillage will help activate that. In addition, it does help you start cleaner as well. Of course, there's other ramifications with the tillage around some of the environmental concerns and trying to keep your soil there. So you have to outweigh those for your herbicide control.
Yeah, I'd also add there, Tyler, it's going to depend a lot of which chemistry you're spraying out there too, because some of them you don't want to get mixed into the soil. Some of them you want that thin layer of chemistry right on top of the soil surface as the weeds emerge. Some you can work in, so it's going to depend a lot on the chemistry out there. The one thing we did learn from 2021, even in a dry year, and even if you don't get much rain, a pre-emerge herbicide still is going to help you in the long run.
Right. Yeah, because it's not like it goes to zero, right, Ryan? I mean, we still get some control, and you eventually get some. But yeah, it's sometimes you might not get as much as what you planned if it's dry year. But you also can't plan on a failure either. You go for the best plan that you can possibly make.
Right. So
good question.
Okay. Well, appreciate everybody logging on and watching us today. And if you got any more questions, please log on to winfieldunited.com and have a great day.